body, and then you're issuing a death certificate. If it's something that's more suspicious or it's not clear, then I can order the medical examiner's office to perform an actual autopsy. In this case, the injuries that were examined were consistent with a high-speed type of a collision, and it was not necessary to perform autopsies on these individuals.
And when you got to the office in Raleigh, tell us what you found.
Okay, so when I examine cases down at the Raleigh office, obviously the bodies have to be identified prior to the examination. That was done, and I examined 3 individuals that day that were involved in the accident.
And were you able, before your testimony today, to look at several photographs and identify what those photographs were?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were they, if you could tell the jury?
Those were 3 photographs of the deceased individuals. One was Janice Beard. The second one was, I believe, her mother, Miss Felicia Harris King. And the third was Miss McGee.
If I may, this are their States Exhibit 13, 14, and 15. If I may approach, Your Honor. Mr. Moreland, I'm handing you what we have marked for identification as States Exhibit number 13.
Okay,
Do you recognize that photograph?
I do.
Can you tell me who that is in that photograph?
Well, that is Miss Janice Beard.
And can you tell what that is a picture of?
Yes, she is deceased at the scene, laying in a body bag.
And when you found her on July, I believe you said 21st, and had to examine her, did she look similarly to that when you examined her?
Yes, she did.
I may have that one back, and I will show you. States Exhibit 14. Recognize what that is?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that, sir?
That is Miss Felicia King Harris,
And
or
what is
Harris
she?
King.
What is it depicting in the photograph?
She is deceased, and she is also within a body bag.
Is that a true and accurate representation of the way you saw her on July 21st?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think finally, States Exhibit 15, can you identify that?
Yes, I can. That is Miss McGee, and she also is deceased and laying within a body bag.
Does that accurately reflect the way she looked on July 21st when you examined her?
Yes.
State moves to introduce States Exhibit 13, 14, and 15 for illustrative purposes.
Yep, Jackson? Yes, sir.
So I believe you testified that you started with Miss Janice Beard.
That's correct.
Let's go ahead and tell the jury, what is the name you were told she was and how you spelled it?
Okay, so when I get the call from law enforcement, I typically ask them how the name is spelled on the individual, and they give me the spelling at that time that is known to be that individual's correct name. The body is then tagged at the scene by, I have a transport company that I utilize to pick up my cases, and upon examination, the identifying tags on the body reflected Ms. Beard's last name to be spelled as B-A-I-R-D at that time.
And so when you performed your report and filled out the decedent's name,
Yes, ma'am.
you did spell Janice, J-A-H-N-I-C-E.
Correct.
But then how did you spell Baird?
Okay, at that time, the spelling that I was given was B-A-I-R-D.
And at some point later, have you determined that that has been changed on the death certificate?
Yes, ma'am. I checked with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, their records department, and found that the last name had been changed to B-E-A-R-D.
And can you tell us, what did you find when you examined Janice Beard?
Okay, if I can just look at my report just to refresh. Okay, on Janice's body, she had sustained several abrasions of her lower extremities, several abrasions over her anterior face, And the most significant injury, what is known as an atlanto-occipital dislocation. The more type of a layman term for that would be an internal decapitation, although that is a misnomer. What that actually means for the jury is the skull sits on top of the spinal column and is attached by multiple ligaments. And in a high-speed type of an accident, those ligaments can be shared or torn, and then the skull becomes detached. And when that happens, it causes tremendous damage to the upper spinal column or the spinal cord where the respiratory center and cardiac centers are. And that can cause respiratory paralysis and instant death in most cases. It is a survivable injury, but it's extremely rare to be able to survive that. And that was her main injury that I noted on my examination.
And then did you indicate what her probable cause of death was?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
Her death would qualify as a blunt force injury.
What does that mean?
Okay, blunt force injuries are typically injuries that are caused by impact or some type of physical trauma that is non-penetrating, meaning that it was not a gunshot wound or something that actually penetrated the body. So they're typically seen in accidents like this, where there's a high speed suddenly coming to a complete stop and being thrown against some inanimate object causing internal injuries.
And did you determine, or could you tell the age, a rough age of this person, Miss Beard, when you were examining her?
She was told to me to be 6 years of age, and she looked the correct age for her size.
And did you perform an examination on another person involved in the collision on July 19th, 2015?
Yes, I did. I performed 2 additional examinations on the adult passengers.
Who was the next person?
Okay, I believe that Miss Felicia Harris King was the second person that I examined.
You said 2 passengers. Do you believe one of those people, from your information, was the driver?
I believe that if I remember correctly, I believe that Miss McGee was stated as to being the driver of the vehicle.
If the report, do you have your report in front of you, just in case?
I have my report. I'm not sure if I reflected if she was the driver or not. Okay. If you give me 1 second, I just want to look through the
Yes.
report. It doesn't look like I actually record her as being the driver or not, but
On page, if I can direct your attention, Miss Felicia King, page 4.
okay.
And I believe you indicated that you had spoken to, according to Sergeant Stewart.
Okay, it looks like I have her listed as a passenger, but
Okay.
not the actual driver of the vehicle.
But you would only know that because of information someone else had given you?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were talking about Miss Felicia King
Right.
or Darley McGee. Which one are you referring to?
I'm looking at Miss King's report right now.
Okay. So that's what you put in your report, but what did you find when you examined her?
Okay, Miss King had an assortment of abrasions over her upper and lower torso. Superficial abrasions, mainly, and then there was a laceration under her left eye. But mainly her injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma.
And why do you say that? What do you believe her cause of death specifically? Could you tell?
In these types of cases, obviously, you cannot pinpoint exactly where in the body the actual injury that caused the death occurred. So you use a broader term of blunt force injuries because we know the car was traveling at an X rate of speed when it contacted another vehicle. Obviously, if we had done an autopsy, I mean, we may have seen multiple types of injuries that could have caused her death or limited it to one area. So typically, anytime you're in a high-speed accident, you're going to sustain head injuries consistent with rotational injuries, where you're going from high speed to an abrupt stop. You get shearing forces. So it is a combination of those types of injuries with other internal in the thoracic and abdominal areas that fall just under the general category of blunt force injuries.
And were you given an age of the decedent when you were,
Yes, I was. She was listed as being 49 years of age.
was that consistent with your examination?
Yes,
And finally, was there someone else you performed a medical examination on?
yes. The final individual, I was told her name was Darlene McGee, and she was a 46-year-old female. And if I look at my notes, she was listed as the driver, if I read this correctly, of the vehicle,
And again, you got that information from
the Highway Patrol.
best you can remember.
Yes.
And what did you find in examining Darlene McGee?
Okay, Ms. McGee, again, had injuries consistent with Ms. King's. However, her lower torso sustained more intense type of injuries, especially to her left thigh, both medial and anterior. And she had injuries which were known as avulsions, avulsions. Avulsions are different from lacerations, where avulsions are like high-impact injuries where the tissue just separates from the actual trauma of the force, rather than a laceration, which is something that would be caused by a sharp object impacting the soft tissue. So she had significant avulsions of her lower left leg, multiple femoral fractures. Some of them were compound, meaning that they came through the skin, and displaced fractures. And the rest of the injuries were mainly lacerations and abrasions. And again, these are all consistent with blunt force injuries.
And that is your probable cause of death?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moreland. We have no further questions. You are with the defense.
Thank you.
Thank you. No questions, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Any objection against you?
No, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Further evidence on that, sir?
I would request to publish those photographs to the jury and we'll call the next witness.
Ladies and gentlemen, the jury states exhibit number 13, 14, and 15 going to be passed among you. You should view them carefully individually and without comment. Yes.
Left hand on the Bible, raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you give this court and jury to be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
You may proceed.
Finish with.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, please state your name to the court,
John Collins with the State Highway Patrol.
and how do you spell your name?
JOHNCOLLINS.
And how long have you been with the Highway Patrol?
15 years.
Are you assigned to a specific duty or unit currently?
Yes, I'm assigned to the Collision Reconstruction Unit, and I'm a supervisor in the Greenville office of that unit
How long have you been in collision reconstruction?
since February 2008.
Do you understand that, at a later time, we might talk more about your full role of investigation in this case, but today we're talking about a specific piece of evidence?
Yes, sir.
Were you, part of the investigation into the, deaths, of Darlene McGee, Alicia Harris King, and, Janice Beard, and in which Mr. Kania was charged?
Yes, sir, I was.
And was part of your responsibility in that investigation to do a forensic download of Mr. Kania's mobile telephone?
Yes, sir, it was.
Tell us how that phone came into your possession.
It was seized by, pursuant to a search warrant by members of the district and stored at the district office here in Hillsborough, right down the road. I went to that office after it was put into evidence, took it out, and had a search warrant to examine the phone. So there's 2 search warrants there.
How did you know the phone that you had at that point was the phone that had been possessed by Chandler?
It was taken from the district troopers from Mr. Kania's father.
Okay. And are there, signatories or indications somehow on or in the phone that link it to Mr. Kania somehow?
Yes, sir. What-
Like a phone number?
Yes, sir. Mhm.
Okay. And,
And we have a chain of custody also, so it kind of follows the path.
right. Okay. So if you could, describe what it means to download a mobile phone.
The software I use is called Lantern, and it's on the Mac. The software itself is on a Mac computer, and basically just plug it up like you would back up your phone to iTunes or something like that, because this was an iPhone that we were dealing with. Use the an iPhone cable. You plug it into the USB port on the computer, and there's very little setup on the software. You can put in your evidence number, if you want to put that, your case number, the name of the person, the case, the defendant's name, and you basically just hit a button that says acquire, and it takes a few minutes to, basically, it doesn't take anything from the phone, it just copies what's on the phone and puts it onto the computer in like a report format.
How many times would you say you've done a Lantern download of a mobile phone?
That's several times. I mean, we're doing it a lot more now, including last year. I've been doing cell phone downloads since probably around 2009, 2010. We got our first software to do this. And then we received Lantern around 2014, 15, probably 2014 is when we got Lantern, the end of that year. And even through training, I did several phones. I mean, it's been a lot.
Okay. I think the judge and the jury may understand you can't pin a number on it, but if you were gonna take an estimation of how many times you've done it, both with Lantern and in general, what would you ballpark that?
I'm averaging probably maybe 4 to 5 a month for the past couple of years.
Okay.
I do it from Greensboro east, basically to Manio, Wilmington, all that, so I'm on the road a lot doing that.
And so, having done these downloads, you get some kind of digital file essentially?
You do. You can, once you're done, you can choose to make a report of it. And in that, you can choose to put it in a PDF format. And that's what I did with this one.
Okay. So, is part of your work also include, essentially reading or interpreting the data that you get from these phones?
Yes, sir, it is.
So, once you get this PDF report, have you, in the past, been required to read it in order to be able to tell what we're looking at?
Yes, sir.
And, hold on, please, John. So you said you did a download of this phone,
Yes, sir.
and it resulted in a PDF report of the data that you were able to extract from it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Trooper Collins, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir, I do.
What is it?
It's a disk containing the PDF of the download, and those are my initials there.
Okay. So are you sure that this is the same, that this disk contains your PDF download?
Yes, sir.
Have you had an opportunity to see this disk placed into a computer and look to be sure that what is on this disk is the download you performed?
Yes, sir, on Monday morning.
Okay. Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to authenticate the download of Mr. Kania's phone.
Any objection as to that?
Not as to authentication.
So received.
Trooper Collins, you said earlier that you've been placed in a position where you need to take this data and read it in order to use it for purposes of investigation. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Is one of the things that's extracted and placed in this report the text messaging of the owner of the phone?
Yes, sir.
And does that print out in a, well, you said, sorry, in a PDF format? If you were to view an excerpt from the text interaction that was downloaded from Mr. Kania's phone, would you be able to explain to the jury how that data is to be read in terms of text interactions with other people?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to excuse you to the jury room for just a few moments while you're in the jury room. Do not discuss this case among yourselves. Neither should you form or express an opinion about this case during this time. Please leave your name, book, and your seat.
judge, what it means.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm connected. Ms. Sawyer Brown, are you able to put me on screen?
Okay, how do I do that? Okay.
For purposes of limiting what was shown, I shrunk the window there, as you can see, but the window that occupies the top half of the screen there, does that appear to you to be a Lantern download of a mobile phone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does it appear to be Chandler Kania's Lantern download? And if you can't tell from this, it's okay to say.
But I can see the file name on the top left in the bar there.
Okay. And the lines of text that are contained in that window, if you could, even though it may seem obvious, explain what we're seeing there.
You have the time, the date and the time on the left, in that left column. So that first date is 5/4/2015. Time is 18:24:39 seconds. That's Eastern Time. So 6:24. And the next column are your messages to and from. So on the top line, it says message from Alexa Calasurdo. Colasurdo.
And so when a message on the right part of the printout says message from, does that mean it's from a contact of the user with that name that appears next?
If the name is there, it's a contact that's in the phone already. Otherwise, it would just show message from 919, whatever. It would show the phone number itself.
Okay. And then if you have, as you do in the next line, something that says message to so-and-so,
Mhm.
would that mean it is a message from the user, meaning the possessor of the phone, to that contact?
Sent from that phone. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Your Honor, it could be argued that that is, well, I
That's
don't know.
fine. Do you have any other questions?
I have no more questions.
You want to ask me a question?
I do, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Super Collins, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
When you got the phone, let me try to do it this way, and I'm not gonna try to get too bogged down with the prior hearing. Let me do it this way. You got the phone from a Trooper Hazelton, is that correct?
It had already gotten back to the district office by the time I got to it, but Trooper Hazelton's the one who seized it.
So we'll go backwards.
Okay.
We'll go backwards in time. You got the phone from the district office, correct?
Yes, sir.
Where's the district office here?
Right down the road. Yes, sir.
Okay. It had come from Trooper Hazelton, correct?
Yes, sir.
Trooper Hazelton got the phone from Michael Kania, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's Chandler's father, correct?
It is.
You will recall this probably from a prior hearing. Before Michael Kania had given the phone to Trooper Hazelton, he had backed up that phone, correct?
That's what I come to understand. Yes, sir.
And similarly to how you began on the direct examination here, and you likened this to sort of a backup on the iTunes,
Yes, sir.
right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You were not there when, of course, when Michael Kania backed up that phone on iTunes, correct?
No, sir.
And my question here is, you did not get to see the original contents of this phone from the scene. It was only after it had been plugged up to a computer and manipulated at least one time, right?
That's what I was told, sir.
Okay. Now, what what was the date that you got the phone from the district headquarters?
The day I downloaded it.
What day did you download it?
I think it was the 27th, is that correct?
Of-
July. I think that's right. It was seized before that, but I think I got it on the 27th.
So the data that you saw on the phone from the Lantern software, and this is an excerpt from that software, you don't have anything to compare that with. It's just you see what you came over in that download, and it's in a PDF format, right?
Yes, sir. It's the image of what's on the phone at the time I downloaded it.
And all you have to go by on what says sent, received, whether it's here, and of course I see we're talking about text sent in May of 2015, but all you have to go on when you downloaded this was message from, message to, as it appears on the picture. That's what a PDF is, right?
Yes, sir, but my habit is I don't go in and search. I didn't search May, but I go, once I do the download, I'll open the phone up itself, hit the text app, and kind of compare the two, make sure everything's kind of going together. Make sure everything looks like my download did, and then that's sufficient for me to say that that's an image of what's on the phone.
Prior to you getting the phone from the district office, and I've already done sort of the link or chain, is one way to do it. The phone had also changed hands between a few people before it even got to Michael Kania, is your understanding, right?
Yes, sir.
It went from a Ditz Shaw that'll be testifying at some point today or maybe tomorrow, who knows?
Yes, sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Then it went to somebody else, you know where it went after that?
I do not. I have an idea, but I do not know.
But you don't know.
No, sir.
You know how many times it changed hands after that before it got to Michael Kania?
No, sir.
Thank you, Trooper Collins. No further questions at this point.
Thank you, Ron.
Well, yes, insofar as my request to the court is that I be allowed to, in order, at a later time, to illustrate to the jury certain text passages that this trooper be allowed to explain, again, albeit it may seem obvious to some, but not to others, that basically that when it's the thing he said about how message to means from user to this person, message from means from that person to the user. I would like for him to be able to explain that. I'm not admitting this into substantive evidence. I would contend that the actual words here are not prejudicial in any way to Mr. Kania, but just so that at a later time, if the court rules that a text interaction between a witness and the defendant is admissible, that they be given some help in understanding what they're looking at that time.
And I agree with Mr. Newman, I don't have a problem with the contents of these texts up here. I agree, they're totally benign. I guess my issue and my concern is, I think it's up to the jury, based on what each individual witness says on whether he or she sent or received a text on the stand. I don't think it's fair that Trooper Collins gets to go ahead and say now, well, this text was sent by so-and-so, or this text was received by so-and-so. I think that's what the jury gets to, they're the fact finder. And this is training the jury on what they're supposed to think just based on that. They have to determine that. And again, it's on an individual, whatever witness A that's up there, and if they're text back and forth with Chandler, that's up to that witness to say, I sent this, or I received that, or I don't know. And then the jury, as the ultimate fact finder, gets to take that into consideration, and they get to find that as fact. This is coaching them and steering them in the direction that they need to go, or they are wanting to go.
Your Honor, something that I'm sure Mr. Smith will make clear on cross-examination as to the weight to be given to it, that I suppose they could argue to the jury that it's possible someone other than the contact name is the one doing it. Again, I intend to introduce this through the actual live people who will be here. But it's also reasonable to understand that there may be people who don't remember perfectly what they said in a text message from over a year ago. It's possible, I don't anticipate it, it's possible even some of the state's witnesses may make themselves adverse to the state, and it may be necessary to ask them leading questions as to what they said or did. They may be reluctant to do it. Also, I can't deny the possibility that this is evidence that could be used in cross-examination of some of the defense witnesses who certainly won't, or who probably won't be forthcoming with, "I did text this," but I would contend this is at least reliable enough to say, "You don't remember saying this. Is this not your name? Is this not a text message that you sent?" At that point, so I would ask that it meets the reliability standard to be authentic, that it is what it purports to be, and then questions can be asked and arguments be made as to the weight to be given to it.
Okay, you got the phone?
No, the phone has been returned to Mr. Kania.
Okay. I will allow him to proceed on how, this works. And then we'll take up the other matters, on the admissibility of individual text, at a later time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may like to hear you. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you earlier that we were going to excuse you from the courtroom, and we did. We're going to do it again, probably. Place no importance upon it, and do not speculate as what may have occurred, if anything, when you were not here. Witness would state.
Trooper Collins, if you were to see an excerpt of the PDF download of Mr. Kania's phone relating to the text messages in that phone, would it, or could it assist you in explain to the jury what the text on that PDF means?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here, at this time, I would request that the witness be allowed to, I'd request a jury view of the excerpt that we've seen and allow him to explain the data.
May proceed.
All right. All right, so, sir, referring to the window at the top of the screen, does that appear to you to be an excerpt from the download of Mr. Kania's phone?
Yes, sir. It's the PDF format of the download.
Okay. And if you could explain,
That and make that as an exhibit.
I can.
We're going to need to do that. And the purposes of this is for the purpose of illustrating and explaining to the jury about how to look at the data.
Yes, Your Honor. I can do that. And so if you could, starting with the top line, just explain what it is we're looking at.
The report breaks it down into certain sections, and this will be the messaging section of the report. On the left column there that you see, it says 5/4/2015. That's the date. Next to it is the time, is 1824 Eastern Standard Time, so that's 6/24. If you go over to the next column on the top, it says message from Alexa Colasurdo. And if you notice the next one below, with the time is a minute different, so it's 1825, same date, and it says message to Alexa Colasurdo. So basically, this is a messaging between the user of the phone, the device, and Alexa Colasurdo.
Okay. And who is the user of the phone as you know it to be?
Mr. Kania.
Okay. And when you do this download and get this PDF, and let me ask you about that, based upon the very kind of the line just above the text, how large is the PDF report from this phone?
4,884 pages.
Okay. And then you get this download, do you do anything to try to spot check or ascertain what the printout is, matches up with what's actually inside the phone?
I do.
How?
Once I download it, I basically open the download itself like this in a report form and open the phone itself. This is an iPhone in particular, so there's a messaging app. I click on the messaging app because it's time-stamped. It's very easy to corroborate. So then I look at my report. Now, this collision happened in July, so I wouldn't have gone back to May because these are, that's a long ways away. So I basically look at the first several texts on the messaging app, go to the report, make sure the times are the same, and just corroborate that they're in the phone and on the report.
Okay. And to your knowledge, where's the phone now?
It was returned to Mr. Kania.
Okay. Is that usual or unusual after you've gotten this image through Lantern or any other program?
Yes, sir, that's usual
Okay.
practice.
All right. Nothing further undirected.
Witness to the defendant.
No, thank you, Your Honor. No questions.
Thanks, sir. You stand there. Further evidence, stage.
Yes, Your Honor.
I need to go get it. Who is it?
Well, it's who we have, preferably Alex or Josh, but I don't think they're here, so. Then I want Rebecca. The state will be calling Rebecca Green. May take a moment. You can stay. Well, no, there you do it. You can go. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. The witness we intended to call next had a later flight. That doesn't mean we're not ready to proceed. It just means that we had to skip down a couple. That witness is on the premises, but that witness is in our office. It just may take us a couple minutes for us to shepherd them in.
the record, Teresa, have about
Yes, sir.
Richmond, state.
Ma'am, please state your name for the record.
Rebecca Green,
How do you spell your name?
Rebeccagreen.
Okay. Do you go by Becca to some people?
Sure.
Okay. And I'm not saying I'm going to call you that, but would
I
your
do.
friends call you that?
Yes.
Okay. Where are you from?
I'm from a small town called Southern Pines in North Carolina.
And tell us about yourself. What do you do? What's your occupation?
I'm a senior at Chapel Hill, studying political science and psychology, hoping to graduate in May.
Okay. What do you want to do when you graduate?
I'm actually studying the LSAT right now. I hope to go to law school next fall, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay. How do you know the defendant?
I met him through my ex-boyfriend at a fraternity.
Okay. Do you remember when that was?
October, November of 2014.
Okay. And who do you mean when you say your ex-boyfriend?
Case Aldridge.
Okay. And what do you understand Case's relationship with the defendant to be?
Best friends. They used to be best friends in the fraternity house. They were brothers also.
When you say brothers, do you mean fraternity brothers?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. And at some point, do you feel as if you developed a friendship with the defendant independent of him being your boyfriend's best friend?
I do.
Okay. Describe that to us.
The summer of 2015, we were all in Chapel Hill together taking classes and there for the summer, and we became very close, not just because of his relationship with my ex-boyfriend, but we were friends. We were actual friends.
Okay. As a part, though not all, of your friendship with the defendant, did an informal discussion arise involving your hopes involving Case and his hopes, if you could explain that?
Yes, so my best friend is Marley Spence, and they were together for a little bit, and becoming friends over the summer, we confided in each other about it. We wanted to help each other be happy and get back together with the ones that we wanted to be with.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn your attention to July 18th of 2015. Do you remember that date?
I do.
Why do you remember that date?
Because we had planned, it was a Saturday, we had planned to all go out together that night.
Okay. Does the events that happened the next morning help make that a memorable day for you?
Yes.
All right, so tell us what your plans were for July 18th of 2015.
My plans were to pregame with all of my friends and everyone, and to go out that night, and I had hopes of talking to my ex-boyfriend.
Okay. Can you explain what pre-gaming is?
A lot of kids gather together in one place and drink alcohol and go to bars together or go to parties together.
When you say kids, you mean adults under the age of 21?
Sometimes, yes.
You don't mean like children?
No,
Okay.
college students, sorry.
Okay. So did you have a pre-game party of some kind at your apartment?
I did.
Where's that?
Shortbread Lofts in Chapel Hill.
Okay. Where in Chapel Hill is that?
333 West Rosemary Street.
All right. Is there a restaurant across the street from there?
Breadman's, yes,
Okay, just for a point of reference, is it across the street from Breadman?
it is.
How old were you on July 18th of 2015?
I was 20,
Okay. To your knowledge, how old was Chandler?
20,
And do you know how old Case was?
19.
Okay. And so, at what point did you make first contact with the defendant on that date? I don't mean just face-to-face, but in some way, how did you first correspond with him?
I think that we talked in the morning. We talked on a daily basis. So I'm pretty sure we started talking in the beginning of when I woke up.
Okay. Did part of that discussion involve your hopes to get to talk to Case?
Yes.
Okay. And then, when was the next time you talked to him? Best you can remember.
We talked pretty consistently throughout the day. I mean, we were talking consistently throughout the day. I don't think there was really a stopping point.
And when you say talking, do you mean by phone or by text or both?
Both.
Okay. And you and I talked about this, understanding that it's not my intention to introduce the specifics of your text interaction, but have you had an opportunity to review your text interaction with the defendant on that day?
Yes.
Okay. Did the review of that help refresh your recollections as to some of the specifics about the interaction you had with him that day?
Yes. I was very excessively texting him towards throughout the night
Okay.
in hopes of,
We'll come to that in a second. At this point, I'm asking, I guess you have your own unrefreshed recollection of what happened that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then
yes.
after you read the text interaction, did it help refresh or perfect in some way your recollection of your interaction?
Yes.
Okay. When you read those interactions, do you have any doubt or deny that the messages you were sending were messages you sent and the message that you received were ones you got from Chandler's phone?
Yes. That I don't deny it.
Okay. All right. So then you say you were talking throughout the day, text and phone call. When did you first come into personal contact with the defendant?
When he showed up at my apartment for the pre-party,
Okay.
pregame.
When did the pre-party, backing up a little bit maybe, when did the pre-party start, would you say, best you can recall?
10:30.
Okay. Do you remember about when the defendant got there?
I don't recall specific times, but he wasn't the first one there.
Okay.
Is-
Do you remember if he stopped by your apartment anytime earlier that day to drop anything off?
He did. I gave him, I didn't want him walking with beer, and I told him he could put it in my fridge. But did not see it happen. I was in the shower, and I told him could come in and do it.
Okay. So was he, based upon your understanding, was he bringing that beer over to give to you or to keep there for him?
For him.
Okay. Do you remember what kind of beer it was?
I don't.
It's fine. All right, so you said that the defendant was not the first person to show up, but at some point you saw him come.
Yes.
Was he with anyone?
He was with a couple of friends from home.
Okay,
I don't know who else.
okay. Just generally speaking, what was going on there at the pre-party?
There were several people there. Some of them I didn't know. Everyone was hanging out. Like, we had a beer pong table, but we were playing with water in the cups. Just everyone's really just hanging out, listening to music, and just hanging out, drinking.
Okay. You say you're playing beer pong with water. Does that mean that people were not drinking at the party?
No, people were drinking, but we typically did not fill the cups up with beer, just water.
Why not?
It's a little more sanitary.
Okay. During that pre-party, did you witness the defendant consume any alcoholic beverages?
I did not.
Okay. Did you consume alcoholic beverages?
I did.
Okay. As far as, to your recollection, how would you describe how much you drank that night?
I had enough to drink that night to where memories were hazy.
Okay. So perhaps like many folks, would you say with the benefit of hindsight, you may have had more than you ought to have?
Absolutely.
Okay. Did the defendant at any point leave your apartment?
He did.
Do you remember, did you see him leave?
I can't remember who all left together, but everyone from my apartment left within 10 minutes of the first group leaving. I couldn't tell you who I walked with, but I would say it was probably around 12 when we left.
Okay. So sometime in the late minutes of the day of July 18th is when kind of everybody picked up and left interspersed.
Yes.
Okay. And when you left, where did you go?
I went to the bar called La Rez.
Okay. If you could, just describe how you get from Shortbread Lofts, where you lived, to La Rez.
It's a very short walk. You just go down towards East Rosemary Street and you cross the first intersection and it's right there, right across from Old Chicago.
Okay. And so did you arrive there sometime shortly after midnight?
Yes.
Okay. Was the defendant there?
I don't know if he was there yet or if he came in behind me.
Okay. Did you at some point see the defendant there?
I really could not
Okay, if you
tell
don't.
you if I saw him there specifically. I wasn't necessarily like watching for him, but he was there with me.
Okay. Were you interacting with him in some way during this time, text or otherwise?
I was texting him looking, I think I did text him looking for him or where they were.
Okay. Did you consume any alcohol at La Rez?
I did not.
Okay. Did you use any kind of identification to get into La Rez?
I did.
Okay. Was it identification of you or someone else?
Me.
Okay. Was it a true identification?
No,
Okay. Was it a fake ID?
it was.
Okay. What, if anything, would you say was the substance of your text interaction with the defendant while you were at La Rez?
While we were at La Rez, I was looking for him along with anyone else. I mean, I think I was there kind of alone. I don't think my friend made it out who was originally with me. So I was looking for him along with other people just to be with.
Okay. At that point, were you looking for him with some connection to meeting up with Case 2?
Yes, that was the entire night.
Okay. And so how long do you think you were at La Res?
Maybe 30 minutes.
Okay. And where did you go when you left?
We went to He's Not Here. Or, well, I actually walked there with two random girls. There was a band playing there, and we wanted to get there to see it.
Okay. And so did you use that identification to get into He's Not Here?
I did.
Okay. When you went to He's Not Here, to your knowledge, do you know where the defendant was?
I don't. I was upstairs in the bathroom for a while.
Okay. Did you see the defendant at He's Not Here at some point that night?
I vaguely remember seeing him pass by, but I was not in a good state of mind at that point.
Okay. To whatever degree you feel comfortable, can you explain what you mean by you were not in a good state of mind at that time?
I had drank too much
Okay.
and was drinking water in the bathroom for a
Okay.
while.
All right. Did you at some point try to reach out to him through phone to, when I say him, meaning the defendant, did you reach out to him through phone at some point while you were at He's Not Here?
I don't know if I was still at He's Not Here, if I had left yet, but I was definitely texting him while I was there and after I'd left.
Okay. What were you texting him?
Earlier in the night, I was texting, asking him if he could get Case to the pregame, and that did not happen. Looking for them, or by them I mean all of the group that we were with, looking for someone to be with. And at He's Not, and when I left He's Not, I was texting him excessively, looking for, trying to talk to Case, trying to find him.
Okay. Based upon your interactions with the defendant, what did you interpret as his motivations for helping you get back together with Case?
Like, why was he trying to do that?
To the best of your knowledge.
I think that he was trying to do it because, like I said, we had created a friendship relationship, and he was also into my friend Marley, and I was also helping with that. But I was I was more intent on getting back with Case.
Okay. Do you know if Marley was in town that night?
She was not.
So, at some point you left He's Not Here. Did you see the defendant anymore that night after you left He's Not Here?
I did not.
Okay. Did you interact with the defendant in any way after you left He's Not Here?
Yes, I texted him several times and called him while I was walking home alone. Part of that was because I wanted to be on a phone or doing something while I was walking home alone. Part of that was looking for Case.
Okay. Thank you. And having reviewed over kind of your phone interaction with the defendant that night, how would you characterize your attempts to get through to the defendant in some way?
I was very emotional and upset by that point. I was excessively and consistently texting him in a desperate way.
Thank you. Did, in some of those messages, did it involve a request to get the defendant to convince Case to come see you?
Yes, I asked several times for him to ask him to come talk to me.
Did he eventually do that?
Did Case come and talk to
Did
me?
Case?
He did.
Okay. When Case came to see you, did he tell you anything about what had gone on between him and the defendant?
When me and Case first met up, we ran into his two friends who were looking for him. And once we helped his friends out, I asked him like why that was going on, and he was like, "We don't know. He left without his phone." He really didn't tell me much at all.
Okay. When you say once you helped them out, what do you mean by that, the friends?
They were looking for him. They were going to, I can't remember if they were going to try to drive somewhere or do anything, but I offered to order them an Uber to go back to his apartment complex, and they didn't want one. And so we just kind of directed them where to walk to.
Okay. To go to his apartment?
I think that's where they were trying to look.
Can we know who the pronoun is? Him and his, it's not identified for me.
Yes, Your Honor. When I ask you to go to his apartment, I'll rephrase, to go to the defendant's apartment.
Yes.
Okay. And do you know where the defendant was living at that time?
I know that it was an apartment complex down MLK that was past a popular one named Lux. I don't know the name of it.
Past a popular what?
There's a popular apartment complex named Lux, and I knew that it was like right past that, but I don't know the name of the actual complex.
Okay. By your estimation, was that apartment complex within walking distance?
Yes.
And at some point, did you receive information that something terrible had happened with the defendant?
I was texting him at this point I was texting him because there's a guy that was on Franklin Street just trying to like talk to me and asking me where I was going and headed and stuff, and at that point I was consistently texting him, trying to find Chandler. And I got a text back saying I think it was Ditz, Chandler left, and that's all that was sent to me about that.
Okay. And to clarify something you said earlier, when you say you offered to get an Uber for the defendant's friends, who were those friends?
His friends from home, I don't remember their names.
That's fine. And when you say from home, meaning not friends from UNC, but from where the town he was from?
I think so, yes.
The best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so you got a text, I think you said, from the defendant's phone that appeared to be actually from a different person, and that was your notice that something had happened. Did you later find out that more about what happened?
Not until the next day.
Okay, how did you find that out?
I woke up the next morning and the rest of the brothers had just heard different stories and they just knew that something had happened. And then the first time I knew the real story was from an article on the news.
Okay. Have you had any interaction with the defendant, text, phone, or otherwise, since that day?
No.
Okay.
No further questions on direct.
Yes, sir, Your Honor, thank you. Ms. Green, good morning.
Hi.
My name's Roger Smith. I'm one of the lawyers that represents Chandler in this case. You and I have never spoken before about this, have we?
No.
But I take it from your testimony here, you have had some conversations with the district attorney's office, is that right?
Yes.
And before taking the stand, you were in their office and came here, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have what's called an immunity agreement
I do.
with the state of North Carolina?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that agreement?
I was given immunity because I was also underage drinking that night. And as far as I know, that's what it's for.
What, as far as that agreement, what's your obligation under the agreement? They're obligated to not charge you with any crimes regarding underage drinking. Well, what's your obligation?
To cooperate?
To cooperate with the state?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Including coming in here and testifying today?
Yes.
Is that right, ma'am?
Yes.
Is that agreement in writing, do you know?
I don't know.
Thank you, ma'am. You originally met Chandler through your ex-boyfriend Case, is that right?
Yes.
And his full name is Alexander Aldridge, but he goes by Case.
Yes.
You two first met in, I think you said October or November of 2014.
Yes.
And it sounds like you and Chandler really became good, close friends, is that right?
We did.
And just to be clear, we're not talking about a romantic relationship.
No.
Y'all became just really good friends.
Yes.
Would you consider him sort of a best friend at the time? And
At
I'm
the
talking
time.
about before this happened, of course.
At the time, yes.
And as you got to know Chandler better and you got to become best friends with him, you would often confide in him, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You trusted Chandler.
A lot.
And you got to know him as a person, you got to know his character as a person.
I did.
And you would certainly consider him a person of good character, is that right?
I would.
You consider him a kind person
Yes.
and a peaceful person?
Yes.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Ma'am, if you look right behind that screen, there's some tissue.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. You were living at Short Red Apartments in the summer of 2015. That's, of course, what we're talking about here, ma'am. Who were your roommates at the time?
I had 2 roommates at the time, Taylor and Kelly. Taylor was not there at all for the summer. Her room was just there. And Kelly was with us that night, but she did not come out with us.
Okay. Was Marley Spence, Marley and Chandler dated for a while, is that right?
They were together.
Was Marley ever one of your roommates, or were y'all not roommates?
No, she's just my best friend.
She's one of your best friends?
She is my best friend.
Is still your best friend? Thank you, Ms. Green. On July the 18th, 2015, that was a Saturday, right?
Yes.
You and Chandler had been texting or communicating or sort of talking all day long, is that right?
Yes.
One of the things, and that was not unusual for the two of you. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Y'all spoke, and when I say spoke, I mean either talked on the phone or texted on the phone on a daily basis.
Yes.
That's how well you knew him.
Yes.
On July the 18th, you both communicated about going out or meeting up on that Saturday night, right?
Yes.
And you had decided to have, I think what you referred to as a pregame party.
Yes.
Can you tell the jury, what is a pregame party? What do you mean by that?
A pregame is usually what we refer to as like where we all meet up together. We drink a little bit before going out to bars, and we are like all together in the same place so we can go out together.
I take it because there's actually a name for it. Is that a common practice at UNC
It's very common.
with the young crowd,
Yes.
especially with the underage crowd, under 21 years old?
Yes, that is why they drink beforehand, because the likelihood is not going to happen at bars or at parties.
And we'll come back to that, these two bars. You ended up, I'm flashing ahead, I apologize. You and others ended up going to a bar called La Residence or La Res that night, right?
Yes.
And you and the others ended up going to a bar called He's Not Here.
Yes,
It's also called He's Not.
it is.
They're famous for the Blue Cup, right?
They are.
Now, those two bars, they're some of the favorite bars of the underage, under 21 student population at UNC, is that right?
It was at the time.
Not anymore
No,
because of this,
because they've cracked down.
because of the case they've cracked down.
I don't know why they cracked down, but they're very strict at all the bars now.
At the time, July 18th, 2015, and of course, before that, these two bars had a reputation among the underage crowd is it was easy to get in there with the fake IDs. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And that was a common practice among your group of friends to go to those two bars, correct?
yes,
Just like you did on this evening.
yes.
And I apologize, I kind of got ahead of myself in this grade. You and Chandler had been texting throughout the day. I think you used the word constantly throughout the day. Not just about having the pregame party, as you referred to it, but also about your desire to sort of get back together with Case. Is that right?
Yes,
Is that, at this point in time in your life, were you really focused on trying to, I guess, rekindle a relationship with Case?
at that point in my life, I was not in a good place. And I thought that I needed him, and he was my first love, and I was desperate to have him, for him to be there and to be with him again.
Yes, ma'am. You were texting with Chandler, perhaps not in that detail as you just explained, but you wanted to have the pregame party, and you wanted Chandler to bring Case over there to the pregame party.
Yes,
At some point, and I believe you stated that you were in the shower, but at some point, Chandler and his two friends, do you remember the friends' names?
I don't.
Does Alex Pugh sound right? If it doesn't, that's fine, I'm just asking.
I really don't know.
You don't remember those two names? But you remember there were two guys from Ashboro that were in town with Chandler.
Yes,
At some point, those three guys, Chandler and the other two from Ashboro, they dropped off a case of Budweiser at your house, right?
yes,
Now, that beer was not just for them, but would be also for other people that came to the pregame party. Is that fair?
if he gave it out.
If he gave it out. Do you remember what time Chandler got to your apartment, the Shortbread Lofts?
I don't know exactly what time. I would assume sometime between 10:30 and 11.
Around 10:30 or 11? How many people?
Stop, I'm sorry, stop.
Yes.
Your question was around 10:30 or 11, there's no answer before your next question.
Yes, ma'am. Around 10:30 or 11?
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Do you know who he came there with, who Chandler came there with?
his friends from home. I have no idea.
Do you know where he had come from?
I think he had come from the fraternity house, but I'm not sure.
Yes, ma'am. How many people came over to the pregame party? Do you remember?
Probably 20 or 25.
Do you recall when you started drinking, excuse me? Do you recall when you started drinking on Saturday, July the 18th?
I would say around 10:30 when the first few people got there and were drinking.
And what were you drinking, ma'am?
Vodka
Vodka? How were you drinking the vodka?
as shots.
The shots? Was the vodka already at your apartment at Shortbread?
Yes.
How did the vodka get there?
So like I explained earlier, pregame is a very typical thing,
Yes, ma'am.
especially around colleges, and it was the summer, and my apartment was a lot of the times where the pregame was at, and people would bring their own stuff, and they're not gonna walk out with it. You don't wanna walk out with a container, so they would just leave it there. We drank what was left over from the past few weeks.
So the liquor that was there at your party, at your house, at the pregame party, that was kind of an accumulation from prior pregame parties you had had?
Yes.
So this was July 18th of 2015. How many other pregame parties had you had at your house over the summer?
I mean, sometimes we would have larger pregames with a lot of people. Sometimes it would just be me and my close friends there pregaming, but it was not like a large thing. But everyone, all of my friends lived in Shortbread, and I had the bigger apartment. So if we were going out, we pregamed in my apartment.
Would this be, I mean, would you have pregame parties, were they just limited to the weekends, or would it be during the week?
Sometimes it would be during the week.
Sometimes it would be during the week. On this Saturday night, about 20 or 25 people came, right?
Yes.
Now, Chandler had dropped off the Budweiser beer earlier. He didn't bring any liquor to the party, did he?
Not that I know of.
You had mentioned at some point you started to get, I think you used the word hazy, is that right?
Yes.
At what point in the night did your memory start to become hazy?
Between leaving Shortbread and he's not that time period.
And what do you mean by hazy, actually?
Some like details of memories are not there.
You started to lose memory when you left Shortbread, is that fair?
Yes, but in that case, I mean, I couldn't tell you the details of exactly who was walking with me or who had already gotten there or who I saw there. But I also wasn't really paying attention to the tiny details about it.
Yes, ma'am. Do you remember with whom you walked from Shortbread to La Res?
No, my roommate who was with us did not make it out, and the girls who had come to the apartment, I didn't know them very well, but we walked in a group.
And that's about midnight,
I would say so.
give or take, I'm assuming, but roughly around midnight.
Yes.
When you got to La Res, do you remember how many people you were with?
Maybe 6 or 7.
You got into La Res with a fake ID, is that correct?
Yes.
Where had you gotten your fake ID?
A large group of us ordered them. I don't know where they ordered them from. I was just a part of the large group who ordered them from somewhere. I think it was online somewhere.
That was actually be my next question.
Yeah.
Online, probably. Did you actually do the ordering, or did
No,
somebody kind of
someone-
order for a big group?
Yeah. And I just had to give her money.
And when when you say big group, how many people would you say were in this group that got fake IDs, just on this order?
I would say 18 or 20.
18 or 20? You were 20 years old at the time, is that right?
I think I was 19 when I did this,
19 when you got the fake ID?
but 20 at the, yes.
Okay, thank you. How common is it, excuse me, in Carolina for people to have fake IDs?
It's very common.
Are you in a sorority in Carolina?
Yes.
Is that mainly a sorority or a fraternity type of thing? What I mean is, you said it's very common for people to have fake IDs. Is that more limited to sororities and fraternities,
I wouldn't say so.
campus-wide?
Yeah. Yes.
They're just that easy to get?
I wouldn't say that it's easy to get them. I just don't think that Greek life is majority social partiers or,
Yes, ma'am, and that's exactly what I wanted to know, and I appreciate you explaining that. It, across the board,
yes.
not just fraternities, sororities, across the board, very common for people under 21 to have fake IDs.
Yes.
That's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our morning recess at this point. During our morning recess period, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. It's your duty not to talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. It's your further duty not to talk to anyone else, to allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case. If anyone communicates with you in any way, let the sheriff know about it when you come back in. Don't do any individual research or investigation on your own about any issue touching on this trial. Stay away from your smartphones, it has to do with this trial. And have no contact with anyone participating in this trial. And do not form or express any opinion about this case during this time. With that, while everyone else will remain seated, I'll excuse the 14 of you and ask that you return and assemble in the jury room at 11:30. Again, we go by that clock. If that's your excuse. Record reflect that all the jurors absent from the court meeting have the record of the state of North Carolina.
No, Your Honor.
They have the record of the defendant.
No, sir, Your Honor.
We recess 11:30.
Thank you.